I'm a little bit concerned, though, about the way that this conversation is going right now. I think that if this was a different situation, if you had white teens who had tortured and brutalized an African-American young man, and those white teens had talked about Obama and had been laughing, I don't think we would be having a conversation about how, oh, our political discourse is so toxic, and maybe these kids saw things on Twitter about Obama. And so
Simone's talking to you.
When I watched that video,
I would say that's true, because you know what, the relationship of black people to America is very different than the relationship of white people to America. We're talking about.
It is a crime that Chicago police call sickening, and it is. And I think we can all agree with them on that. An 18-year-old white man beaten by 4 teenage black suspects, shouting anti-Trump slurs, the whole thing broadcast on Facebook Live. And I must warn you, this is very disturbing to watch. CNN's Rosa Flores is covering this story for us from Chicago. Rosa, it's disgusting, this disturbing video out of Chicago tonight. Tell us the latest.
You know, Don, it really is disgusting. And according to Chicago police, they believe that this man was targeted because he has mental health challenges. They also believe that he knows at least one of the suspects, and that at least initially he was with them willingly. But that obviously changed. And like Don said, we have to warn you, this video is very graphic.
Watch out, quiet. No, cause I got my blood on this shit, bro. Hey, cut this off, boy. I'm gonna make your ass walk on butt. Boy. Donald Trump. White people, boy. White people, boy.
Goof. Let's go. Oh, bro, great. Ugly, oh, bro. No, well, oh, bro, great. No, well. Ugly.
You can tell from the video that the victim is white, that the suspects are black, and that they're speaking with anti-Trump type of language as well. And so the obvious question, of course, Don, is this a hate crime? Is this racially motivated? We've asked the police at this point. They're still investigating the motive.
And they said that they do believe that the victim knew the attacker. So how long was the victim with the offenders?
You know, that's one of the things that they're also investigating, but they do believe that he was with them for 24 to 48 hours. So you still have to wonder exactly what transpired in that time, because right now we're only seeing a small window that was caught on video. Now, they do say that the offenders stole a van from a suburb, because this victim is from a suburb, not from Chicago, and they brought him to Chicago, and that initially he was with them because he knew one of them. But that obviously changed, Don.
They're in custody tonight. It's 4 of them, right?
Yes, 4 of these offenders are in custody. We're expecting charges to be filed within 24 hours. And when we see those charges, Don, we'll get a better picture of exactly what transpired here, because those charges will tell us a little more as to what happened.
Do we know how old they are?
Or what police believe that happened. They're all 18 years old. According to police, they know each other from school. At some point, one of these suspects went to the same school as the victim, and that's how they know each other.
Who is raising these kids? I mean, it's unfathomable.
It's disturbing.
It's really just vile, and there's no excuse for it. How's the victim doing tonight, Rosa?
You know, the police say that they can't get into the extent of his injuries, Don, but they do say that he's highly traumatized. He's even having trouble just talking to the police about what transpired. The police say that they had trouble just talking to him because he's so traumatized.
Yeah. Well, we hope he's going to be okay. Rosa, thank you for that awful, awful story.
You're welcome.
I'm going to bring in now CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey, the video is difficult to watch. Your immediate reaction?
You know, I mean, we can talk about this in the legalities, but, you know, you just have to wonder, like, how can human beings be so awful? And just, you know, as you said, who raised them? What motivates people to treat a disabled defenseless person like this way. And you know, unfortunately, in our line of work, we see a lot of evil, and this just looks like evil.
And it's just dumb, stupid behavior here that's obviously, and I mean, I don't know, I hate no home training, because no one I know who was raised by any parent would even dream of doing something like that. My mom would probably beat me worse than that kid. Is this, you know, we've been talking to the police. Police say they're still investigating. They won't classify it as a hate crime. Is this a hate crime?
Well, I don't know, and I don't want to prejudge too much, because, you know, frankly, even the video has so many bleeps that you would need to hear what he said, because you know, racial epithets perhaps might have been bleeped, and that's something that would be relevant. I'm not sure everyone knows, but you know, racial motivation can be black versus white, white versus black, and so it is certainly possibly a hate crime. Everyone should be clear, it's illegal under any standard. Hate crime laws merely enhance penalties. They don't create something that wasn't criminal into being criminal. This is obviously an assault of some kind. It's only a question of how prosecutors would charge it, and they certainly would want to do a full investigation, talking to any witnesses who might be listening to the tape without the bleeps. All of that would have to be involved in a measured decision about what precise crimes to charge.
I did watch the unedited version of this, and there's an unedited, unblurred version, and they do use the N-word, but the kids I see, there could be other kids there, the kids I see are black kids using the N-word, and you do hear some of them. By the way, you can't help but feel sorry for the victim. You see him, you know, he's being choked, he's being hit. He just looks awful. But you hear some of the offenders, Jeff, shouting, F Trump, F white people. Do you think that this was politically motivated, a politically motivated crime, or are these just stupid kids?
You know, I'm going to say the 3 words you're never allowed to say on cable news, which are, I don't know. I mean, I just don't. You know, what goes into the heads of people who are doing something like this? You know, I can't fathom it. And whether you can say it was political, racial, I don't know. That's why you have to do a full investigation of, you know, the whole circumstances surrounding this event. You know, I just really don't know how to characterize at this stage what the motivations here is. Racial animus, hostility, certainly that's a possibility, and you'd have to consider that.
Well, the fact that they would put it live on Facebook, which is why, you know, many people don't put any credence into social media, because these are sadly the type of people you get responses from, the people who think it's okay. And I wonder if, because you can go on anonymously and do things like that, that people feel free to be able to put something like this on social media, which is just beyond the norm of anything.
But I mean, just how stupid. I mean, you know,
yeah.
to put yourself committing a crime on social media. I mean, just, you know, the master criminals these people were not. But I mean, in a way, I'm grateful that they did put it on social media, because now they're definitely caught. If there hadn't been social media, who knows how this investigation might have gone. So, I mean, the perversities are many in this story, but I mean, it certainly seems like we're not going to have a case of mistaken identity in terms of the arrests that went on.
We're not done discussing this terrible offense. We're going to dig deeper. Thank you, Jeffrey. We'll be right back. 4 black teens under arrest in Chicago in connection with the beating of a white teen. The suspect shouting anti-Trump slurs as the attack was broadcast on Facebook Live. Let's discuss now with CNN political commentators Peter Beinart, Alice Stewart, and Matt Lewis. Also Simone Sanders, a former press secretary for Bernie Sanders. Okay, so listen. There's certain things that I can't say that it's a hate crime because Chicago police won't say it. They're saying they're still investigating it. They're not they're not done with their investigation. But when you look at this, Simone, they're saying F white people, F Trump. How can you say it's not a hate crime against a white person?
So first I want to say this is absolutely sickening. it's unfathomable that so much hate and anger can fill up a person where they go out and they think that this is okay. And then it was stupid to do it on Facebook Live, but that's a whole nother story. So this is absolutely sickening. But I'm going to say something that's probably not very popular. We cannot callously go about classifying things as a hate crime. Motive here matters. So was this for hate of Donald Trump, the president-elect, because of the things that he has said, or was this for pure hate of white people? That matters, because if we start going around and anytime someone says something or does something really egregious, really bad and sickening in this instance in connection with the president-elect or Donald Trump or even President Obama for that matter, because of their political leanings, that is slippery territory. That is not a hate crime. Hate crimes are because of a person's racial ethnicity, their religion, their gender, a disability. It is your political leanings, because someone doesn't like your political leanings and they do something bad to you. That is not a hate crime.
But Alice, even hate crimes, aren't all hate crimes motivated by stupidity?
They're motivated by a lot of things: stupidity, heartlessness, thoughtlessness, carelessness, so many things. But clearly, I agree with Simone. This is sickening to watch, sickening to think that some careless, thoughtless thugs would do something like this to someone who appears to be so innocent. But look, not to get too far ahead of the legal skis here, based on what we hear in the video, it does sound as though this was a hate crime. The language they used about referring to the poor victim as a white person and the different language they used. And I hope it is classified as that, because therefore the penalty will be much greater and they deserve the harshest penalty they can get. I'm like you, Don. I'd fear what my parents would do to me much more than what the law would do to me if I was caught doing something like this.
I just wonder,
I never would.
when you see these are 18-year-old kids, and you look at the video, you're like, what is going on? What on earth? Why would anybody ever think that it was okay to treat another person like that for any reason, regardless of if it's a disabled person, if it's a mentally or physically incapacitated person, if it's a white person or black person, whatever. Why on earth, Matt? I just don't understand it.
I mean, it's man's inhumanity to man. It's brutality is what it is. And I think the fact that this is a vulnerable person who was probably duped into sort of going along with them, it appears, somebody who was mentally disabled, I think makes it even more sickening. But, Don, I mean, at the end of the day, you just try to wrap your head around evil. That's what this is. It's evil. It's brutality. It's man's inhumanity to man. And
I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's evil. I think these are young people, and I think they have bad home training. I think that when I say who is raising these young people, I have no idea who's raising these young people, because no one I know on earth who is 17 years old or 70 years old would ever think of treating another person like that. It is inhumane, and you wonder at 18 years old, where's your parent? Where's your guardian, Peter?
Did y'all forget? Wait,
hold on. Let Peter answer, Simone, and then I'll bring you in. Go ahead, Peter.
I don't know. I mean, look, this isn't the epidemic of violence in American society. Robert Kennedy spoke about it very eloquently decades and decades ago. This is a horrific example, a sickening, as people said, a sickening, disgusting example of a kind of senseless violence that exists throughout American society. I mean, look at the number of people who are murdered every year in the United States compared to other societies around the world. I mean, this is one particularly grotesque example of a kind of casual violence, a kind of casual violence that we just take for granted in the United States.
Yeah, Simone, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What did you want to say?
I just want to remind folks that we cannot sit here and ignore that for at least for the last year, on very public display, the worst parts of America have been brought from the fringe into the mainstream. So that affects people on both sides. We've talked about white nationalists and white supremacists and the KKK, but there are also when this inflammatory rhetoric is out there, when someone is repeatedly telling you that your community is the worst of the worst, it brings out the worst of the worst in people. And so I'm not defending what they did. What these young people did was sickening. I would argue that they also need some help in addition to some consequences, but this just didn't come out of thin air. Some of the nastiest and worst things have been dragged out into the mainstream.
Let me just say this. These young people probably never watch the news. probably have no idea
I don't think that's
really.
fair. I really don't
They
think that's
probably
fair.
have
Y'all
no
have to give,
idea
y'all have to
really
give
who
young people in
Donald
this
Trump
country more
is.
credit than that is.
No idea
Everybody knows
really
who
the
Donald
political
Trump is.
process. I'm just saying that's, and listen, that's my point of view.
Don,
I don't think that they
this-
really understand if they don't understand the ramifications of tying someone up and beating them and putting it on Facebook Live, then they certainly don't understand the ramifications of a presidential election.
Don, I
Go on.
don't think this is about presidential election. I think this is symptomatic of what we're seeing across the country with the breakdown of the American family, which is unfortunate, heartbreaking, and tragic. And we will find out the motives as this continues to unwind and we find out more. But the disgusting language they use, and the girl in the video is laughing about it and egging her friends on. And for them not to have the moral fortitude to realize this is absolutely wrong, something's going wrong, it appears, with at home and what they're being taught, and for them to think this is okay, we've got a lot of teaching to do with our children, and I think as I said, it stems from the breakdown of the American family.
Simone, you think I'm being too hard on these kids?
I am very hesitant to cast these young people as folks who come from broken homes. For all we know, they have a mother and a father who work very good, hardworking jobs, who have instilled or tried to instill good moral values in them, and the young people just aren't listening. So I think, one, we need more facts, and I think, two, we have to be careful to cast our young people, particularly our young people of color, to the side. Look, this was wrong. It was sickening. It was grotesque. They need help. They need to be punished. But we also have to have an elevated conversation about the surroundings and the things that our young people are dealing with every day and the images that they're seeing. They might not watch the news, but they're on Twitter where the president-elect is. They're on Facebook. They're listening to the Breakfast Club. They're listening to the radio. And all of these nasty, nasty things that we've talked about, that we've witnessed over the last year, they have seeped into our children. They are in our schools, and it is coming to bear its ugly head in very, very egregious ways.
She's saying, and Peter's saying, that this is, although they're not making excuses for these kids, this did not just happen in a vacuum.
Well, look, I think it's fair to have a conversation about our culture. I think that whether it's video games or violent movies, that those things, music, whatever, I'm not a prude, but those things all have an impact. I'm a little bit concerned, though, about the way that this conversation is going right now. I think that if this was a different situation, if you had white teens who had tortured and brutalized an African-American young man, and those white teens had talked about Obama and had been laughing, I don't think we would be having a conversation about how, oh, our political discourse is so toxic, and maybe these kids saw things on Twitter about Obama. And so
Simone's talking to you.
When I watched that video,
I would say that's true, because you know what, the relationship of black people to America is very different than the relationship of white people to America. We're talking about years, 200 plus years of slavery, 87 plus years of Jim Crow. And I'm not making excuses for these things, but it is not the exact same thing. We have to talk about these at elevated levels. We can't boil it down to, someone saying something disparaging about the first black president of the United States of America when the current president-elect questioned his authenticity as an American. That has some layers to it.
I just think that in context here, having watched that video, and the first or second thing maybe that you bring up is to inject well, maybe these, the impression I'm getting, at least from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that maybe they were asking for this. Maybe Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
I'm sorry.
This.
Let me clear this real up. I've never said no one was asking for it. The first thing that I said was, this is sickening, this is disgusting, and it was wrong. But what I did say was, we don't know if it's a hate crime.
Okay.
That is very.
Peter,
very
you're not usually this quiet,
important.
and Peter's been sitting here absorbing this. Go ahead.
It's so disturbing that honestly I have difficulty just kind of having a conversation about it. I think that they're two completely different conversations. There's a conversation about the horror of what these kids did, which is a horror, period, end of conversation. There's a totally different conversation about where we're heading as a society, where we are becoming more racially divided than we were even a few years ago, which I think is tragic. And I think, yes, Donald Trump bears some of the blame for that in a way that that another Republican candidate, another Republican president wouldn't have, because of some of the frankly racist things that he's done. That has nothing to do, however, with in any way mitigating the horror of what this event was.
All right, thank you. That's going to
It's
have to be the
horrible.
last word. I'm out of time. Thank you very much. We come right back. A dramatic day in court today as convicted Charleston church killer Dylan Roof faces a jury.